In our headlines on this Wednesday, April 1st, here in South Korea, President Lee Jae-myung and his Indonesian counterpart Prabowo Subianto raise bilateral ties to those of a special, comprehensive, strategic partnership. US President Donald Trump claims the military could end its Iran mission in 2 to 3 weeks, while lashing out at NATO allies for their lack of support. Meanwhile, South Korea's exports post an all-time monthly high in March, while its stocks rebound sharply on prospects of an end to the Middle East unrest. Today we start here on the local front, where President Lee Jae-myung and his Indonesian counterpart Prabowo Subianto sat down at the Blue House earlier on this Wednesday for talks to tangibly promote partnership. Our top office correspondent Yoon Jung-min reports.
The summit began with a grand welcome, a traditional honor guard for the state guests. President Lee Jae-myung hosted his Indonesian counterpart, Prabowo Subianto, on Wednesday at the Blue House, where they agreed to upgrade bilateral ties to a special comprehensive strategic partnership.
이번 대통령님의 국빈 방한을 계기로 양국 관계를 대한민국에서는 유일한 특별 포괄적 전략 동반자 관계로 격상하는 역사적인 결실을 맺게 되었습니다. 참으로.
My state visit here comes at a situation where the world is full of uncertainty and danger. So this makes relationship between countries like Indonesia and Korea more important.
The talks yielded key deliverables, as the importance of the bilateral cooperation was highlighted amid the global energy crunch due to the conflict in the Middle East.
우리는 인도네시아가 LNG와 석탄 등 주요 에너지원의 안정적 역할을 해주는 데 대해서 무척 든든하게 생각하고 있습니다. 이번 위기가 양국 경제와 국민의 삶에 미칠 영향이 최소화되도록 에너지의 안정적 공급 및 자원 안보 관련 양국 간의 협력을 확대해 나갈 필요성이 매우 큽니다.
You have achieved tremendous strides in your development. Your industry and your science and technology is very advanced. We have a lot of resources. We have a big market. We can complement each other.
A host of MOUs were exchanged, including cooperation on the economy, critical minerals, clean energy, and AI for health. South Korea and Indonesia also plan to bolster their defense industry cooperation based upon their joint development of the KF-21 fighter jet. The leaders also addressed their global contribution as middle powers. Later in the day, the Indonesian leader was hosted for a state lunch, along with key business leaders, building a personal bond and friendship. President Lee presented his Indonesian counterpart with the nation's highest order, the Grand Order of Mugunghwa. The top-level talks come amid what the president calls a complex poly-crisis on a global level. On Friday, President Lee will host his French counterpart, Emmanuel Macron, at the Blue House. Yoon Jung-min, Arirang News.
On the international front, US President Donald Trump claims the Pentagon's military campaign against Iran will end in about 2 to 3 weeks, adding that a deal is not necessary as long as Tehran has been rendered incapable of developing nuclear weapons. Our Kim Do-yeon has the latest.
Speaking at the White House on Tuesday, U.S. President Donald Trump signaled a withdrawal of American forces from Iran within weeks as the Pentagon simultaneously ramps up pressure on Tehran to secure a ceasefire agreement.
Excuse me? I think we're 2 or 3 weeks. We'll leave. And it's very clearly covered.
Trump also added that the U.S. could leave without a deal as long as the U.S. achieves its goal of denuclearizing Iran. And he repeated his claims that Iran is the one that wants a deal.
And they won't be able to come up with a nuclear weapon. Then we'll leave. Whether we have a deal or not, it's irrelevant.
Shortly after this, the White House also announced that at 9 p.m. Wednesday local time, President Trump will address the public on the latest on Operation Epic Fury. According to Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt's ex post, it's a, quote, an important update on Iran. Despite the timeline for withdrawal, the U.S. Defense Department is maintaining a hardline stance to force an agreement. Following a visit to U.S. Central Command, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth stated that American firepower is increasing while Iran's capabilities are degrading.
This new regime, because regime change has occurred, should be wiser than the last. President Trump will make a deal he is willing, and the terms of the deal are known to them. If Iran is not willing, then the United States War Department will continue with even more intensity.
Meanwhile, Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi confirmed that he is exchanging direct messages with U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff. However, Araghchi said that these back-channel communications do not constitute formal negotiations. Simultaneously, Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian has signaled a conditional willingness to de-escalate. He stated that Tehran is prepared to end the conflict, provided there are concrete guarantees against any further attacks on Iranian soil. Pezeshkian said that Iran had previously engaged in good faith, calling recent military actions by the U.S. and Israel a violation of international law. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, taking to a social media platform, Mr. Trump has condemned NATO allies for their broad opposition to his military operation against Iran, which has reportedly resulted in restrictions of airspace access and logistical support. Our Lee Seung-jae explains.
Tensions are rising between the United States and other NATO members as U.S. President Donald Trump pushes allies to support military action against Iran, but key partners are resisting. Several European countries have taken concrete steps to distance themselves from the conflict. Spain has closed its airspace to U.S. military aircraft, while Italy denied permission for American planes bound for the Middle East to land at a base in Sicily. Poland has also rejected U.S. suggestions to relocate its Patriot air defense systems, emphasizing that its current deployments are critical to national security. President Trump responded sharply on social media on Tuesday, criticizing allies for what he described as a lack of support. He singled out France for refusing to allow U.S. military supply flights to pass through its airspace, writing that the U.S. would remember the decision. Trump also warned both France and the United Kingdom that Washington may reconsider its security commitments if allies continue to stay out of the conflict. In a series of posts, he also accused allies of failing to contribute while benefiting from U.S. support. The president went further, urging countries affected by disruptions in the Strait of Hormuz to take matters into their own hands. He called on nations like the UK to secure their own energy routes, suggesting they go to the Strait and take it. The Strait of Hormuz remains a critical global oil choke point, and ongoing fighting has significantly disrupted supply flows. Trump claimed Iran has already been largely weakened, saying the hard part is done, and urged allies to act independently moving forward. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Back here in South Korea, fresh talk about a potential end to the conflict in the Middle East triggered a strong rebound on the local bourse, while the local currency regained some ground. Our Kim Jin-ong covers Wednesday's markets.
The Kospi ended 8.4% higher at 5,478.7 on Wednesday, rebounding after barely holding above the 5,000 level the day before on hopes of a possible end to the U.S.-Iran conflict. A buy-side sidecar was triggered shortly after the opening as the Kospi 200 futures index jumped more than 5%, halting program buying for 5 minutes. The Kosdaq also saw a sharp rise with a buy-side sidecar activated in the afternoon session before it ended 6% higher. March was dominated by volatility on Korean stock markets amid the Middle East conflict. After approaching the 6,300 level before the outbreak, the Kospi swung sharply and at one point on Tuesday dropped nearly 20% from its peak. Foreign selling was a key feature last month. Overseas investors posted net sales of 35.8 trillion won, or approximately $2.4 billion on the Kospi, marking the largest monthly output on record. Holding about 35% of the market, their moves carry a significant impact on its overall direction.
Foreign investors have grown cautious on Asian markets, including Korea, amid the Middle East risks, while profit-taking on major chip stocks added to the selling. However, despite the large sell-off, it accounts for less than 1% of total market capitalization, so it should be viewed in proportion.
The $1 rate also eased, ending 28.81 lower at 1,501.3, after hitting its highest level since the global financial crisis a day earlier. South Korea's inclusion in the World Government Bond Index, or WGBI, also provided a boost, with Wednesday marking the first day of its entry. Compiled by a subsidiary of the London Stock Exchange Group, the WGBI is a key global bond index tracked by institutional investors. Inclusion signals entry into a developed market bond group, boosting credibility and attracting foreign inflows that support the won.
Korean government bonds are gaining recognition as meeting developed market safety standards, which could bring in around $5 billion in inflows over time. With the inclusion taking effect, foreign investors are buying Korean bonds, bringing dollars into the country and adding upward pressure on the won.
Some in the market see the won settling into a new normal around the 1,500 level, though the outlook remains uncertain amid lingering risks at home and abroad. Kim Jun-ong, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, on the export front, South Korea's shipments overseas posted an all-time monthly high in March, driven by semiconductors that appeared largely unaffected by the turmoil in the Middle East. Our Park Jun-an covers the stellar trade performance.
South Korea's exports reached an all-time high in March, hitting $86.1 billion. According to the Ministry of Trade, Industry and Resources on Wednesday, exports surged 48.3% on year to set the 10th straight monthly record in exports. With this, exports have surpassed 80 billion for the first time in the country's history. Average daily exports, adjusted for the number of working days, also jumped 41.9% to $3.74 billion, marking the highest level ever recorded for any period. This comes despite March being overshadowed by concerns over the conflict in the Middle East, which impacted the overall economy with rising crude oil prices. The export surge was heavily driven by the semiconductor sector. Chip exports reached a record monthly high of $32.8 billion. This record is 151% higher than the export figure recorded in the same period last year. The growth is backed by skyrocketing memory chip prices, with fixed prices for key DRAM and NAND products jumping between 605 and 863% compared to March 2025. Korea's exports in the first quarter reached $219.3 billion. Compared to the export target set for the end of 2026, the first quarter figure is on track, already accounting for nearly 30% of the target. However, the ministry said there are still some uncertainties that could potentially impact export conditions in the next 3 quarters.
In terms of annual exports, we can expect a figure higher than the initial target of $740 billion. However, given the ongoing economic uncertainty stemming from the war in the Middle East, along with the impact of U.S. tariffs, it is difficult for us to project exports at a significantly higher level at this point, and we are responding to the situation with a high degree of caution.
As South Korea stays on track to meet its annual export targets, the focus now shifts to how effectively supply chain risks can be managed and potential disruptions can be minimized. Park Jun-an, Arirang News.
The members of the team behind the Netflix sensation K-pop Demon Hunters met with fans here in South Korea to share their thoughts on their most recent critical acclaim as well as plans for a sequel. Our culture correspondent Park Kon-woo files this report.
Fresh off their Oscar triumphs, the team returns to Korea with multiple golden statuettes as expectations soar following the official announcement of a sequel. Director Ma Gi-gang says she's currently working on the storyline, now in early development, while keeping details to a minimum and avoiding spoilers.
My fellow director Chris and I will be making the kind of movie we'd want to see, as we did the first time. So, stay tuned. It will be even more eventful, at an even greater scale. As for the music, I still want to showcase Korean trot alongside heavy metal.
The Koreanness is the soul of the movie on every level. Combination of like really grounding it in the culture, but also breaking rules everywhere. I think we'll try to do that. And my experience of Korean culture and Korean people is that they've been through a lot. And there's a pride and a strength and a sense of unity that I think is really moving. And
Director Maggie Gang also recalled the moment she captured the first ever Best Animated Feature Oscar for a filmmaker of Korean heritage.
I have felt this as a Korean myself, not feeling completely Korean. And now that we have reached this kind of a global market, especially in entertainment, I do think a lot of us, like myself and EJ, who kind of are skirting both cultures, we are the ones who will be bridging that gap between cultures, whether it's Korean or not.
The film's success was shared by its music team as well, including singer-songwriter EJ, who performed at the 98th Academy Awards after collecting an Oscar.
I never imagined it would become so globally viral, especially since I was made fun of for loving K-pop when I was younger. At the Oscars, seeing all the filmmakers singing along while holding light sticks as we performed with traditional Korean music, including pansori, made me so proud that I burst into tears.
With the music team also showing positivity over featuring more Korean-style music, including trot, expectations are higher than ever. And with that in mind, KPop Demon Hunters 2 is set to be released around 2029 to once again spotlight K-culture on the global stage. Park Gun-woo, Arirang News.
And the 2026 KBO League is in season as we speak, and further fueling the excitement on the field and at the stadium is Team Korea's earlier remarkable performance at this year's World Baseball Classic. I have our Chung Hae-rim filing this report from the ground.
This is the Jamsil Sports Complex in Seoul, packed with fans. On Tuesday evening, the Shinhan Seoul KBO League saw the LG Twins take on the Kia Tigers, with baseball fever returning to the capital. Much of this excitement stems from Korea's recent success in the World Baseball Classic, where the team advanced to the quarterfinals for the first time in 17 years.
The energy from the fans at the stadium was amazing. It made the game so much more exciting to play. I'm incredibly thankful for the overwhelming support we've received, both on and off the field. Our goal is, of course, back-to-back championships. We're a team that knows how to find its momentum, so I'm staying focused.
Outside the diamond, a festival atmosphere was in full swing before the game. Fans grabbed their favorite stadium snacks and showed off their love for their team in colorful uniforms.
I miss cheering at the baseball stadium because it's my favorite part of watching the games.
I'm very excited for all the cheering, and I really want to see if there's going to be some good games, like some good hits as well.
As the game began, the stadium turned into a sea of emotion as fans cheered and chanted along to the beat of player songs and also shared both the joy of a hit and the disappointment of an out. Raw passion and love of baseball were in the air, with fans saying they had missed this experience.
The hardest part was definitely the long wait after last season ended. But now that it's finally back, being here in this beautiful weather with my friends feels great.
I hope people realize the owner of Jamsil Stadium is the LG Twins.
The sheer volume of fans returning to the stands signals a golden age for the league. That fever isn't just limited to Jamsil. Over 211,000 fans packed stadiums nationwide during the opening weekend, marking the third highest attendance for an opening series in KBO history.
Can you hear the roar? After another sellout opening weekend, Korea's most loved sport is officially back. Now, all eyes on whether this momentum can carry the KBO to a historic 13 million fans. Chung Hae-rim, Arirang News.
This is The World Now, bringing you everything you need to know from around the globe.
Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps has threatened to destroy American tech and defense company facilities across the Middle East. The IRGC, in a statement released on Tuesday by the government-backed Tasnim news agency, named 18 U.S. companies for what it calls active participation in terrorist plots. The list of companies include Microsoft, Google, Apple, Meta, Nvidia, Palantir, and Boeing. The IRGC ordered people within 1 kilometer of those facilities to evacuate immediately and said strikes could begin as early as Wednesday evening. This follows a confirmed Iranian drone strike on March 3rd that knocked out Amazon Web Services cloud facilities in the UAE and Bahrain. A White House official told reporters the U.S. military stands fully prepared to stop any Iranian attack, citing a 90% drop in missile and drone strikes since the war began. Pakistan and China have issued a 5-point joint initiative demanding an immediate ceasefire in the Gulf and the restoration of safe shipping through the Strait of Hormuz. The two foreign ministers met in Beijing on Tuesday as Iran-backed strikes continue to rattle the region and global energy markets, pushing average U.S. gas prices past $4 a gallon for the first time in nearly 4 years. Meeting in Beijing, the two foreign ministers put forward a 5-point initiative calling on every party to commit to diplomacy as the only path forward, protect civilians and civilian infrastructure, and respect the sovereignty of Iran and Gulf nations, including Iran's peaceful nuclear facilities. Pakistan, which shares a 900-kilometer border with Iran, is emerging as a key mediator in the conflict, leveraging ties with both Washington and Tehran. China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi welcomed Pakistan's role, saying Beijing stands ready to help end the fighting and create an opening for peace talks. In the U.S., a federal judge on Tuesday blocked President Trump's $400 million White House ballroom project, ruling that no U.S. law gives a sitting president the authority to demolish and replace a historical building without an explicit act of Congress. U.S. District Judge Richard Leon granted an injunction halting the 90,000-square-foot project while the lawsuit by the National Trust for Historic Preservation proceeds. Trump took to social media to call the preservation group, quote, left-wing lunatics. He insisted the ballroom is under budget, ahead of schedule, and costs taxpayers nothing. The Justice Department filed an appeal within hours of the ruling. NASA is counting down to a Wednesday evening launch, which will send humans around the moon for the first time in 53 years. 3 American and 1 Canadian astronaut will depart the Kennedy Space Center in Florida on a 10-day mission aboard the Orion capsule on a mission that takes them deeper into space than any crew in history. Forecasters put conditions at 80% favorable, with the rocket ready on the launch pad. Chu Ji-hyun, Arirang News.
Today, on this first day of April, spring rain is continuing across parts of the country. Showers will persist into the night in Gangwon-do and Chungcheongbuk-do province and Gyeongsang-do provinces. Meanwhile, from this afternoon into the evening, rain is expected in inland Chungcheongnam-do province and parts of Jeollabuk-do province as well. Air quality will reach bad levels across the capital area and central regions, and also in Daegu. So please take extra care when heading outside. Mild weather will continue tomorrow. Seoul will start the day at 7 degrees Celsius, Daejeon at 5 degrees, Busan at 10 degrees. Then by the afternoon, Seoul will get up to 18 degrees, Chuncheon at 19 degrees, Jeju at 18 degrees. Looking ahead, there will be clear skies tomorrow, but rain is expected to spread nationwide again from Friday into Saturday morning. Now here's a look at the weather around the world.
Right, those are the headlines at this hour here in South Korea. As always, thank you for watching.